Have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life? Like your choices, your emotions, and even your identity were subtly being shaped by someone else's invisible influence? That suffocating, silent pressure you can't quite explain is the psychological signature of a relationship with a narcissist. Today, we're going to dive deep into the darkest corners of this dynamic, guided by the powerful insights of Otto Kernberg, a renowned psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. His groundbreaking work sheds light on the hidden psychological forces driving narcissistic behavior. If you've ever found yourself doing things you didn't want to do, saying yes when your soul screamed no, or questioning your own sanity, this video is for you. A narcissist doesn't just want your attention. They want control. But this control rarely looks aggressive or direct. It's built slowly through subtle demands, unspoken promises, and emotional expectations disguised as love. According to Kernberg, pathological narcissism is rooted in a deep inner emptiness, a fragmented identity, and an almost desperate hunger for validation. This creates a need in the narcissist to turn others into extensions of themselves. When they ask you to do something, it's not really about the task. It's about affirming their fragile existence through your actions. Every demand is an unconscious attempt at symbolic domination. They need to know that you're still within their gravitational pull, orbiting their desires. Kernberg describes this as a primitive psychological defense, a pattern of idealization and devaluation that keeps their partner in a state of emotional confusion. When you comply, they feel powerful. When you resist, they feel threatened. This emotional dance is no accident. It's a learned script, deeply rooted in their fear of abandonment and worthlessness. The reason they want you to act, even when it makes no logical sense, is because it reinforces their internal narrative. They don't care about your independence. They want your emotional obedience. And the most dangerous part? Beneath all the charm and rationalizations, they can actually convince you that it's for your own good. Kernberg warns us, to the pathological narcissist, the other is not a person. They are an emotional object, something to be used, shaped, and discarded to serve the inflated and paradoxically fragile ego. Staying with this video isn't just about curiosity. It's a powerful act of reclaiming control over your own story. Understanding the roots of this behavior through the lens of Kernberg's psychoanalysis is a key step to breaking free from emotional manipulation. What's at stake here is more than just your freedom. It's your identity. Reclaiming it takes more than strength. It takes clarity. In the beginning, everything feels perfect. The narcissist shows up as charming, captivating, and intensely interested in you. But it's not just attention. They're studying you, mirroring and amplifying your qualities, making you feel special, unique, even necessary. Kernberg calls this behavior primitive idealization, a defense mechanism that projects onto others what the narcissist cannot hold within themselves. And for many, this feels like being truly seen for the first time. But what appears to be admiration is actually the beginning of a dangerous psychological game. That initial fascination isn't random. The narcissist is seeking an idealized figure to fill an internal void, a hole in their identity they cannot face. They need you to serve as a mirror to reflect their worth, to smooth over the cracks in their fragile self-esteem. The intensity they show early on matches the emotional dependency they'll later demand. Kernberg explains that this extreme need for idealization comes from an inability to integrate both good and bad aspects of themselves and others. Reality becomes all or nothing. Soon, the flattery becomes subtle pressure. You realize that to keep their affection, you must meet invisible expectations. There are quiet shifts, disapproving looks, strategic silences, ambiguous comments. The cycle begins. What once felt like affection becomes a constant test. Kernberg says this back and forth between idealization and devaluation is a classic feature of pathological narcissism. It's a way to keep the other emotionally dependent, with no room for autonomy. Pain creeps in when you realize you can't make mistakes. You're walking on eggshells to maintain peace. Yet the fear of losing that intense bond keeps you from facing the truth. You begin to erase yourself for the sake of the relationship. According to Kernberg, this emotional submission happens because the narcissist needs to turn the other person into something they can control. That illusion of internal stability may feel comforting to them, but it's deeply destructive to you. The trap is set, and you didn't even see it coming. What looked like love slowly morphs into control. The cruelest part? Even when you feel the discomfort, you blame yourself for not being able to please them anymore. This is one of the most devastating effects of narcissistic manipulation, the reversal of guilt. You start to believe you're the problem, when in fact, the entire dynamic has been carefully built to keep you emotionally captive. This is how you begin to lose yourself. And the only way out starts with clear awareness. Over time, the affection turns into disguised demands. Now, the narcissist wants you to do things, not because they benefit you, but because they serve their self-image. Kernberg argues that pathological narcissism involves a relentless need for self-affirmation through others. You become a tool to sustain an unstable identity, placing you in a constant state of emotional exhaustion that at first, the request seems small. A favor here, an expectation there. But soon, you're restructuring your entire life around their wants. Every demand carries an emotional price: silence, coldness, sarcasm, or withdrawal. These aren't random. They're calculated emotional control tactics. Kernberg explains that the narcissist operates with primitive defenses like splitting, projection, and projective identification. They project their inner fragility onto you and blame you for everything that's not working. Even when the problem is theirs, you live on high alert. You start trying to read their mind, avoid conflict, earn approval. Your own needs slowly disappear. This erosion of individuality is a deep scar left by prolonged exposure to narcissistic abuse. Kernberg describes it as a distorted object relationship, where the other is no longer seen as a person with feelings, but as an emotional tool. The most devastating part is that this control is wrapped in affection. They say they care, that they're helping, that you need to trust more. This disguise of false concern lowers your defenses. You start doubting your own reality. Kernberg calls this subtle abuse, a manipulation of perception that makes you question your truth. They create an atmosphere where your doubt is seen as betrayal and your autonomy feels like a threat. By now, you're emotionally dependent. Leaving feels unthinkable. The identity you once had begins to vanish. You're living under their emotional logic, and with each new demand, each new expectation, you feel yourself being pushed into a role you never chose. But recognizing this, however painful, is the first step to healing. As Kernberg says, the rebuilding of the self only begins when you realize you've been turned into an object. As the relationship continues, something inside you begins to fade. It's not just exhaustion. It's not even sadness. It's the quiet loss of your authenticity. Kernberg explains that in relationships with pathological narcissists, the partner often bends so completely to emotional demands that they become disconnected from their own truth. You begin acting out of reflex, not choice. Your decisions are shaped by fear of conflict, desire for peace, or the hope of preserving a bond you know is already broken. You don't recognize yourself anymore. Your dreams, your desires, your joy feel distant. This psychic erasure is one of the most dangerous effects of prolonged narcissistic exposure. Kernberg emphasizes that this internal emptiness is caused by internalizing the narcissist's voice. Over time, their critical voice replaces your inner compass, making you doubt yourself at every level. Your thoughts are replaced by their commands. That's when chronic guilt sets in. You feel responsible for their mood, their crises, their failures. The dynamic becomes so twisted that asserting yourself feels selfish. Kernberg calls this projective identification. a defense where the narcissist deposits their dysfunction into you and convinces you it was always yours. You carry guilt that isn't yours, fear that didn't begin with you, sadness that doesn't belong to you. And yet, you stay. Because sometimes they return to who they were at the start, kind, present, attentive. That return to idealization isn't accidental. It's an unconscious technique to keep you trapped. Kernberg refers to this as intermittent reinforcement. The swing between punishment and reward keeps you emotionally hooked. Your brain learns to seek approval as emotional survival, and so you keep trying, even when nothing is ever enough. The collapse of authenticity is the destruction of inner freedom. At that point, it's no longer the narcissist holding you prisoner. It's you, trying to live up to impossible expectations. This is the cruel paradox of narcissistic relationships. The more you give, the less you have left of yourself. Seeing this clearly, through the lens of Kernberg's psychoanalysis, is the first step to reclaiming what was lost, your identity. Narcissistic manipulation rarely shows up as a direct attack. It's a hidden power game, played out in silences, distortions, and between the lines. Kernberg defines this pattern as part of a narcissistic borderline structure, where the person swings between grandiosity and extreme vulnerability, masking their fragility by controlling their emotional environment. When a narcissist demands something from you, it's rarely about the surface request. The real goal is psychological domination. These dynamics are not random. They follow an unconscious script, where the narcissist maintains a sense of identity coherence through the behavior of others. What they want is not your help, it's your emotional submission. Kernberg notes that this need for control isn't rational. It's defensive. The narcissist fears rejection so deeply that they must ensure your loyalty. Everything is manipulated to keep you orbiting around them. Language becomes one of their sharpest tools. Words are used like scalpels, capable of both seducing and wounding. Vague phrases, criticisms masked as advice, poisoned compliments. All of it is designed to destabilize your perception. Kernberg teaches that this perverse use of communication is a way to blur the boundaries between self and other. If you no longer trust your feelings or thoughts, it's easier to submit. Another hallmark is the constant emotional debt. The narcissist creates situations where you always feel like you owe them, even when you've done nothing wrong. They appear to give more, care more, sacrifice more. Kernberg describes this as moral reversal, where they pose as the victim and cast you as ungrateful. Guilt becomes a chain, keeping you connected even when you want to leave. Breaking free from this power game requires more than strength. It requires clarity. The insights from Kernberg's work offer a psychological map to spot these emotional traps. Once you see the pattern, the illusion starts to break. The narcissist's power lies in confusion. Regaining clarity is the first strike against the prison. And that's where true self-recovery begins. Leaving a narcissist isn't just ending a relationship. It's deprogramming an emotional conditioning that was installed slowly, sometimes without you noticing. Kernberg emphasizes that true healing starts when you can integrate both the pain and the reality of what happened. That means acknowledging the abuse without denying the good moments. Accepting that there was manipulation, even if there was affection. Integration of opposites is what allows you to rebuild a stronger identity. The way out begins by listening to your inner voice again. You must learn to trust yourself. At first, you'll question everything. You'll wonder if you're exaggerating, if you're being unfair, if maybe it really was your fault. Those questions are part of the process, but they can't stop you from moving forward. Kernberg explains that narcissists leave behind an internal mark, an echo of their critical voice that lingers even after they're gone. Recognizing this echo is the first step to disarming it. Rebuilding the self is a gradual process. It starts with boundaries, reconnecting with desires, rediscovering your goals. It takes patience and self-compassion, psychoanalysis, as Kernberg shows, is a powerful tool in this process. It helps uncover the unconscious patterns that led to these repeated dynamics. Understanding why you were drawn to someone like this is as important as walking away. Life after a narcissist requires real grieving. For the illusion, for the version of yourself you had to let go of, even for the hope that they might change. That grief is painful, but essential. Kernberg reminds us that true emotional maturity comes when we're able to abandon childish idealizations and face reality with courage. And that reality, though difficult, is deeply liberating because it gives you back to yourself. This is where the journey changes. When you understand narcissism through Otto Kernberg's lens, you don't just escape a toxic relationship. You reconnect with your wholeness. You stop being an object and become the subject of your own story again. Finally free to write a new chapter, one where your choices come from within, not from the need to please someone who never truly loved. Looking back at everything we've uncovered, one truth becomes clear. A relationship with a narcissist isn't just emotionally draining. It's a silent psychological process that tries to reshape who you are. What begins as admiration becomes control. Affection turns into obligation. Constant presence becomes emotional surveillance. Kernberg shows us with precision that these relationships aren't built on love, but on the pathological need to keep the other as an ego extension. And seeing that clearly is the first step to breaking the cycle. Every phase of this journey, from idealization to the collapse of authenticity, from the invisible power plays to the rebuilding of the self, reveals how narcissists strategically, if unconsciously, trap others into giving up their emotional freedom. Throughout this video, you've seen how these traps form, not just in obvious acts, but in the small emotional dynamics of everyday life. As Kernberg explains, it's not always about hatred or malice. It's about a psyche that protects itself from pain by projecting suffering onto others. And that's exactly why leaving is so difficult for the victim. But one truth remains. No matter how much you were manipulated, drained, or confused, your worth is untouched. Nothing you lived through defines who you are. The narcissist tried to rewrite your identity through their own wounds, but your essence is still there, just buried beneath fear and doubt. Otto Kernberg believes that true healing begins with recognizing your pain and your power to rebuild. You don't have to go back to who you were. You can become someone wiser, fuller, freer. The only question is, how long will you let fear make your choices for you? Emotional freedom doesn't come from impulsive breakups. It comes from deep clarity about what's really at stake. You're not just ending a hard relationship. You're reclaiming your story, your ability to say no, your autonomy, and, most importantly, your peace. Kernberg's psychoanalysis doesn't offer shortcuts, but it gives us solid ground to stand on, a way to understand both the complexity of suffering and the beauty of healing when we choose truth. If this message resonated with you, if it reflected your experience or sparked new insight, share your thoughts below. Tell your story. You never know who might see it and find strength in your words. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Here, knowledge is more than information, it's transformation. And together, we'll keep exploring the human mind with depth, responsibility, and courage. Because to understand is the first step toward freedom. So, if you've ever felt like someone was pulling your emotional strings, like you were being used without even realizing it, know this. You're not alone, and you're not crazy. Narcissistic manipulation is real, and it's more common than we think. But once you learn how to recognize it, they lose their power over you. If this video opened your eyes in any way, even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Someone who might be caught in the same emotional trap and doesn't even know it yet. And if you want more powerful insights like this, based on real psychology and the work of experts like Otto Kernberg, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. You deserve to understand the truth. You deserve peace. And most of all, you deserve your power back.